We're here today in the lower level of the Collinsville Memorial Public Library on Main Street to talk to Irving Dilliard, who has been so helpful in the establishment of this library, and his his grandparents lived in the house that was here before, right, Irving?
Right.
Right. And we have a picture of that house right here. And that house stood here when the city decided to use this for a library after it was in the city hall, wasn't it? They
Correct.
moved it here.
It was the home of known as the Renfro House in those days, before the library took it over. But before that, it was owned by Oliver Childs Look and his wife, and they were the parents of my mother.
I see. Your mother's maiden name was Look.
L-O-O-K, Look.
And the Look family started when our founding father came from the east, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm. And they came from the British Isles. The name was probably Luke originally, L-U-K-E. But when they settled on Martha's Vineyard, it became Look, L-O-O-K. And in any event, that was the name that came from the Atlantic coast out here to this part of the new country.
And he had property here,
Oh, yes,
and he was the first justice of the peace.
that's right.
Mm-hmm. And where did he originally have a house, Irving?
Well, they had a house on Main Street at about where Glick's store is now, but the house was a six-column sort of colonial or Grecian style house, and it's now down by the apartment house on West Main Street, very close to the Curl and Dye place there.
And the apartment house used to be Far City Manufacturing Company and originally the knitting mill.
That's right, and it's right next to that.
And that house is still standing.
Still standing there, and it's an interesting house to look at for more than one reason. One is that if you look at the front of the house, you see a door right in the center. And if you turned around and came the alleyway between Main Street and Clay Street, came behind it, you'd see that there was a door right opposite, but that door at the very back of the house. So in the days before there was such a thing as air conditioning, people would have a screen door on the front and a screen door on the back, and then they'd open up the other doors and let a breeze blow through the house. And that was the way the houses were cooled a bit in those early days.
Mother Nature style.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, getting back to this house that was the library,
Yeah.
they eventually bought that house, right?
That's right.
And it became the library, and then that house was dismantled and this building was built, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And when it was built, it was just a center portion.
That's right.
And it's a kind of a Williamsburg look, isn't it?
That's right.
Colonial.
Colonial.
And then they added the wings on later.
That's right. What happened was this. The first meeting of the library board I went to was in 1936. I was appointed by Mayor Harrison, Dr. Harrison. He, of course, was a prominent resident of our community in those days, as well as an official. He ran a kind of a hospital as well as a doctor's profession. But in any event, he appointed me to a vacancy on the library board. And so I turned up at a meeting of the library board in this house, which you're holding here. Mrs. Vincent A. Herr Sr. was president of the library board. And she conducted the meeting quite well. And then there was a roll, something on the table rolled up, looked like blueprints. And I asked what was rolled up there, and Mrs. Herr said, well, that's blueprints of our new library. It's going to be built here. And I said, well, I'd like to look at those. And she said, well, we want all members of our board to know what the new library is going to look like. So after a while, I got a chance, and I opened them up and spread them out a bit. And the more I looked at them, the sorrier I got, because the architect had designed a jail. And all it needed was somebody walking back and forth across the top of that building with a gun over his shoulder to make it just look like a prison. And I thought, well, a shame it is that that's what's going to be built here. And Mrs. Herr, after a while, said, how do you like our new library? And I said, well, I believe if I'd been on the board when these plans were drawn and approved, I would have tried to make the front entrance a little more inviting. And, there were two ladies sitting by the board, or on the board, by the table. One of them was Josephine Bernhardt Dunham.
When she's 100 years old now.
She's going to be 100 in September.
Isn't that marvelous?
Lives over in a rest home at the edge of O'Fallon. And she was a teacher in the high school, taught certain science courses and so on. Very nice lady. And I heard her and Dorothy Eckert, who was in a high school, in a library at a high school. I heard them say something, and I thought, my, how interesting that is. One of them said to the other, that was after I said I'd make the front more inviting. One of them said, you know, we didn't think at all that seemed to welcome people the way that was designed. And I thought that was explained it all. The men had hired an architect. They were paying him a fee. They'd let him do it, design it any way he thought it should be. Then they'd build the building, and then you'd know what it looked like. And yet the women had paid more attention to the design of it on the plan. So I thought to myself, well, if my mother was born in this building, I ought to be a little concerned about what is built here. So I asked them if they had membership in the Illinois Library Association or the American Library Association. My recollection is that they said they had memberships in both. Well, anyway, I said, well, they would send you, I'm sure, some plans for a library in this size community if you wrote to them and told them this is the size of Collinsville and what would look good here and so on the main street. The point of the whole thing is that I told them then that I would like the next day, I was going to St. Louis the next day to go to work. And at noontime, I'd go over to the St. Louis Public Library and see what they had in the way of plans that might fit into our community. Well, we got plans, several different places. Finally threw away all of the plans for the jail. The architect was Mr. Kennedy, and he turned the whole thing over to an assistant he had. And he said, they want to some colonial style building to him. You take it over, I'm through with it, in effect. And that's what happened. And a fellow named Gady, Goedde, became the architect, and he designed, with some of the plans we got and so on, designed the center portion of this. And there was a house on each side. The Stamen house was on this side. The O'Connell house was on that side. And I bought the Stamen house when the family had died and moved out and so on, became vacant. I bought it with a GI loan. And we kept using it until, paying on it until when the city could take it over.
You rented it out.
Oh yes, we rented it out and got the rent from it, and we paid that into the cost of it, so that finally the city didn't have to pay very much to get that property. And that was the first piece of property. And the businessmen on the board, rather impressed by that, suggested maybe we ought to get the O'Connell place. My thought was that we ought to let something be built out there that would keep the library from going each way. And the result was that we did get these two pieces of property. And a wing was built on one side, and then a wing on the other side. And when they had originally said, well, why don't we go out and back? I said, we will go out and back, but we should do that last, not first. Because by that time, we'll know better what the shape of the library is and what we need in the back, rather than to build it first. So that's why the back part was the last extension.
That's what the community room is. It's the children's library. That's on the floor.
And the upstairs where there are so many bookshelves and so on. So that's how the two wings came on and how that was built out at the back.
Well, Irving, was remarkable, your insight and your forethought to think to buy that property, because we don't do that nowadays, and then we're sorry later. And that started the whole expansion program, didn't it?
It did, you're right.
Now, where we are on this lower level here is the ring. When you look at the library, it's on the left-hand side.
That's right.
And that's where the museum is, over here.
That's right.
Now, that museum, you were very instrumental in getting that going too, because you had a chest from the Collins family come
That's
here.
right. What happened was this. I grew up as a boy at Church and Aurora Streets, right across from the what had also been the Look Home. Finally, you might say they're about their third home in Collinsville. My mother's mother and father's home, and so the time came when Collins family, which lived in on the corner just east of where the Look family lived.
That's Church and Aurora.
One was on the Collins house was on the northwest corner of Church and Aurora, and the other house of the Look family, which had been originally the Wing House. WNG, a very prominent name. Actually, there's a street down in the west part of Collinsville called Wing Avenue.
He was the doctor, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was named for him. Well, anyway, that was where the Collins family lived. The time came, though, when all members of the Collins family had either died or moved different places and so on. And actually, some of them had gone to California. And one of the daughters in the family, the once prominent name was Reed, R-E-E-D. And the street that goes from Church Street straight south, gentle, slow slope all the way down to the railroad down there. It's called Reed Avenue after the family. And that was a street that people used buying, going and coming to the railroad in the days when the railroad was the way people went to St. Louis and anywhere else. So that way it was used for that purpose. Well, anyway, the Reed family, some of them went out to California. But one member of the family named Emily Stave cared enough about it that she saved a lot of pictures of the Reed the Collins family, and memorabilia that she had them in a big trunk. And the time came when she moved from California up to Colorado, and then she came here on a visit, and she brought the trunk and turned it over to me. And in a sense, that trunk was what, and the contents was the #1 item starting on the museum.
And it's wonderful that we can go back to the very beginning of our town, to the very founders of the town, and have the memorabilia and the pictures and all to go with it. A lot of museums don't do that.
That's right. And I never go over to Glenwood Cemetery, which I do about once a week on account of the resting place of some members of my family. That I don't look at the Collins stone monuments there in the cemetery and think how much we owe to the Collins family.
That's right. And then it was around 1976, I think, that we actually started the museum, wasn't
That's
it?
about it.
The Women's Club wanted a project for the centennial,
That's
the
right.
200th anniversary of our country.
That's right.
And then they had the nucleus with the trunk, and from that we've grown to what we are today.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And your late wife was a Doris, right?
That's right.
Dorothy Doris.
And her father was the school superintendent.
And the fawn out in front, the pipes of Pan, is a fountain in memory of him. I think that was around 1937, something like that. Mm-hmm. So you're a firm foundation for this library.
Well,
And we're here to talk about this room that's here. And this room was made as your office, so to speak, right?
yeah, there were a number of things that I had that I thought might go into one collection and be a sort of extension of the museum. What would be the things that I had assembled that I thought belonged here rather than among the things that I museum, because I've given many things. For example, there are many books in here that were inscribed by the authors to me. My name is then Dorothy's name, written by the author, and then the author would tell right who he was and then when he gave it to us and so on. And there must be a couple of hundred books in the room there like that.
Irving, let's go back. When you graduated from high school, they want to have your banner in there. What year was that?
1923.
1923, and Dorothy graduated with you,
Yes.
right? And you were always a writer from the beginning, right? Even in school?
Well, I did quite a bit, yeah.
And then you later, when you were married, lived in this look house that we talked about across from the Collins,
Correct,
right?
yeah.
Then you went to work for the Post-Dispatch. When was that?
I began working for the Post-Dispatch really when I graduated from college in 27, but I had already done some work for the Post-Dispatch because I was at the Collinsville Herald office, for which I did quite a bit before I, or even at the end of high school, began to go to do some things for them, and then I did it in my college years. I did things for them before I graduated from college and went to the Board of Inspectors. But I was there at the Herald office one Saturday writing an article on, my recollection is that it was on the anniversary of the Presbyterian Church. And that I was writing that article, and the telephone rang, and this was one of the people at the Post-Dispatch wanted some information about an accident that happened down at the foot of the Main Street, not Main Street, but St. Louis Road, where it would get down to the highway there.
57 down there where the road ends?
That's right, where they come together. And there'd been an accident down there where one of the road curved or something. I believe and the streetcar went down that way too, and it was a streetcar and an automobile, I believe it was, an early auto. Anyway, the Post-Dispatch called out and called the Herald to see what they could tell them about it. And I was working there that Saturday morning alone in the Herald office, and I answered the phone. I went down and got what information I could for them, and that was, in a sense, the start of my connection with the Post-Dispatch.
I see. Irving, where did you go to college?
I went to the University of Illinois.
University of Illinois.
I went up there in 1923 after my high school, and graduated in 27.
And then when you worked at the Post-Dispatch, you rose to be editor, political editor.
I became the editor of the editorial page.
And
But I did do, I was a reporter for several years, and I began to volunteer editorials on subjects that I thought other people would write about, and did that, and that got me started connected with the editorial page. And from that, I went on, finally became editor of the editorial page. Became an editorial writer permanently. And then when there was a change made in the editorship of the editorial page, I took it over.
and all these books and these cartoons that are framed, most of them are signed by the author or the artist. And you've assumed a collection here, and you have a wonderful habit with a book. You want to tell us about that? When you have a book and you're at a conference or something, you do something that's wonderful. Tell us about that.
You mean get other people to sign it? That's right, I did. I had many of the books that when I would go to a conference or an important meeting or something, I would take a book along and I'd write a few lines at the top indicating what the occasion was and the date, and then I'd pass it around. And
I think we have one over here. You know, I have an affinity for Salzburg, and you share your Salzburg things with me. But this autographed book here by the autobiography of a bird lover. Now that's signed by the author too.
yeah.
And you let me that to read.
Oh, yes. Frank Chaplin. That's right.
And then you enlisted in the service, or were you drafted?
You know, I volunteered.
Volunteer. And you went in as what rank?
I went in as a captain.
As a captain. And you were in intelligence, right?
That's right.
And you were stationed in Austria?
I stationed first in England, and then in France, and in Germany, but I was in Austria. In fact, as I was even down on the African coast too.
I want to talk a little bit about Salzburg since we had this affinity here. But you were at a seminar in Leopoldstrasse.
There was Chrome.
Rome, right? Castle. Right. And so you've lent me these wonderful things about the Salzburg seminar, and also this wonderful book about Mozart memorabilia. Now, tell us about that wonderful conference.
Well, what happened was that it was soon after this happened, but some very early Americans in Europe, wartime and after the war, got very concerned about relating Germany and German people and Austrian people and American people. And they thought that the thing to do was to find some place over there where Americans came and stayed and benefited and helped there, and then learned so much that they took away with themselves when they went home. And that was the way, actually, what you call the Salzburg Seminar got underway, got started. And Salzburg is a very pretty place in the upper part of Austria, and has a beautiful building called Leopoldskron. And that was taken over eventually by those people who were so concerned with setting up a seminar there. And it became the home and base of that seminar. And I was there 2 different times. It's hard to recall the years for each one.
Well, we have one supplement here, 1956, 1958.
Did that relate to me?
The Salzburg Seminar.
Yeah.
And then we have one, 1970.
Yeah, well, my recollection is, and I think it would work like this. I was on the Post-Dispatch active working every year until 1960. And I've been on the Post-Dispatch a third of a century, 33 years and 4 months.
33 years and 4 months.
That's a third of a century. And I thought that I would step aside and do my own projects that I had started, wanted to get to work on. But just about that time, I was invited to the Salzburg Seminar, being American there, and help conduct courses. And I did, and I think I've lent you some of the pictures of that I have from that very first. My recollection is that would have been about 1960, 60 running in there. At that time, that's when I first. I went back again several years later, I think about 5 or 6 years later, and they asked me to come back again, and I did, and I conducted another set of seminars.
And you made many friends there, didn't you?
Oh yes, many European friends who came to America afterward, and some of them visited us out here, but I stayed in touch with quite a few of them, young people, but some of them were professionals in the field of newspapers or scholarships or whatnot, teaching and so on.
And I want to add one thing. This beautiful place, this castle that you stayed in, was featured in The Sound of Music.
Oh, that's exactly right.
Right.
Yeah, it was almost the basic part of it.
Yes, it's a wonderful place.
Yeah.
Well, Irving, we're going to go look at your office here, and we want you to tell us about some of the important things. And we've got a kind of a preliminary background now. And I know you come up here every week and you get in here and work and study. And I know at home you're going through a lot of your papers and things too, and documenting them and seeing to that they get to the right places. And I think that's very admirable. So if our cameraman will move with us, we're going to go inside and look around in your office, and you can just show us some things, and I'll kind of ask you some questions, okay? So after you, Irving.
All right, thank you.
Hey, Jeff, can you get in here?
We have to leave that in there. In front.
Okay, can you get in here, Jeff, all right?
Oh, yeah.
Now, Irving, first of all, you have your Army uniform in the corner there, right?
That's right.
And your helmet and all, and that's a nice spot for it. And that's left from World War II.
Correct.
And it's hanging there like it was when you hung it up. Right. Now these are your political science books that were written by people that you know and signed.
That's right. Well, most of the autograph and scribe books are over here. And there's one after another. Oh, there must practically all of those are inscribed. Let's see what. There's one from. I'll put this one down here because in it Justice Douglas has some nice things to say about me.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciated that. He drove through here one time years ago on his way from Washington to the Pacific Coast out to Washington. And he stopped with me and I had a nice time. But these books here are all autographed by the authors.
And they're all different kinds. I see one called The Poetry of the Earth, and this one, Main Street on the Middle Border by Louis Atherton.
Yeah.
That's Indiana Press.
Since you mentioned Main Street on the Earth, Poetry of the Earth, to get down and see. We had you were describing how things were signed, and this was on the occasion of the retirement of Irving Dilliard from Ferris Professor at Princeton University in 1973. And this was at the function when it was.
And you saw to it that everybody signed it.
That's right.
Well, that's wonderful.
Seeing this name Jerry Finch here makes me tell you something that will amuse you. I had gotten out a book on Justice Hand, whose picture is right there by your foot. Justice Hand. The book is called The Spirit of Liberty. That is, I named it that. And somewhere here we find The Spirit of Liberty. And it's up here someplace. Anyway, that was a book I put together about him. His things, certain things he had written, not decisions, but other things that I thought ought to be.
And you compiled the book.
And I compiled the book. And when I went to Princeton, this fellow, Jerry Finch, was a prominent member of the administrative staff at Princeton University. And the first thing he said to me when we met was, he said, it's something to meet you. He said, you've cost me a lot of money. And I said, I've cost you a lot of money. Well, I'm sorry about that. How was that? He said, you don't need to be sorry. He said, actually, I ought to be glad. He said, I bought a copy of your book on Justice Hand, The Spirit of Liberty, and I liked it. And he said, I give books to people for presents. And I thought, well, I'll just give somebody a copy of The Spirit of Liberty. And he said he did. And he said the person liked it so much that I decided to give the next person that I was going to give a book to, The Spirit of Liberty. He said, I've just bought copy after copy, And he said, "You just cost me a lot of money."
Well, that was a wonderful thing for him to do.
Well, I was going to show you what I think. Oh yes, the fellow who put this book together, "The Poetry of Earth," wrote here for Irving that he was a professor of English at Princeton. Irving Dilliard, in affectionate and fond memory of many years of happy association at Princeton. This volume, which means much to me, more to me than any other that I have ever made. And so he put together what he called the Poetry of Earth, and it covered places in England and elsewhere, things about the beauty of the earth one might.
Well, Irving, this is quite a collection. It has your all kind of awards.
Here is a book I have to mention while my hand is close to it. It says "Tide Without Turning," and it's not the name of the author is Gill, Gill. I met him first and got to know him first as a result of his interest in mine as well in Lovejoy. Lovejoy, who lived up first in St. Louis and then moved to Alton, and that's where his press was destroyed.